Marcus Reed never imagined a school cafeteria could feel this cold. He stepped inside holding a simple paper lunch bag, the kind a loving father packs with care, thinking he was about to make his daughter's day. He'd left work early, wiped the grease from his hands, and whispered to himself, "She's gonna smile so big." But the moment he entered, something felt off, like the laughter around him had a sharp edge. He scanned the rows of crowded lunch tables, searching for Amara's bright yellow sweater. He expected her waving, maybe laughing with new friends. Instead, he found a tight cluster of students forming a barrier around a table near the back, shoulders pressed together, heads leaning in, voices whispering things they didn't want adults to hear. Marcus slowed his steps, something in his chest tightened. A girl's voice drifted out from the circle. "Why do you even bring that weird food?" Another voice snickered, "Just throw it away. Nobody wants to sit with you anyway." Marcus's hand tightened around the lunch bag. He knew that tone. He'd heard it growing up. He never wanted his daughter to hear it too. He moved closer, slow, cautious, pushing through the maze of tables until the kids blocking the view shifted just enough for him to see a small backpack knocked to the floor. A notebook lay beside it, pages bent, one corner ripped clean off. Then he saw it. A familiar head lowered, shoulders trembling, fingers wiping quickly at a cheek. His daughter. His Amara. Her tray sat in front of her, half empty, not because she ate, but because someone else did. A boy dangled her applesauce above her head, laughing as she reached for it. A girl nudged the tray with her elbow, watching Amara flinch like she'd been doing it for weeks. Marcus froze. It felt like every ounce of air left his lungs. Then he heard her voice, soft, breaking. "Please, please stop." That was it. That was the sound that shattered him. Marcus stepped forward at last, ready to protect the little girl who thought she had to suffer alone. What those kids didn't know would change everything. For most people, morning begins with an alarm clock. For Marcus Reed, it begins with the soft footsteps of a 12-year-old girl quietly packing her backpack in the kitchen, trying not to wake him because she knows he works late. Marcus is the kind of father who notices everything, except, sometimes, the things he desperately wants to believe aren't there. He wakes up before the sun, washes his hands in the bathroom sink, and looks in the mirror at a man who carries two lives on his shoulders, his own and his daughter's. Years of working at an auto workshop have built calluses on his palms and worry lines across his forehead, but his eyes soften instantly when he sees Amara. "Morning, Daddy," she says like she's greeting her best friend. Amara is small for her age, with quiet eyes that study people before she speaks. She wears her natural hair in the puffiest bun she can make, even though she's still learning. Marcus always compliments it, even when it's slightly lopsided, because her mother once told him, "Support her confidence before the world tries to break it." Her mother passed away when Amara was only 6. Since then, Marcus has tried to be both gentle and strong, soft and steady, but he worries if it's enough. He works long hours, sometimes late into the night. He misses school events, class parties, award ceremonies, not because he doesn't care, but because he's always had to choose between being present and providing. And Amara, with her tender heart, never complains. This year, Marcus transferred her to a new school, larger, better facilities, diverse on the outside. He thought it would be a fresh start, a place where she could blend in, make friends, stand a little taller. But something changed. At home, Amara became quieter. She laughed less. She drew more superheroes with giant shields and tear lines hidden behind masks. She would come home with her lunch barely touched, saying she wasn't hungry, even though Marcus packed her favorite meals. He'd find pencils missing, erasers ripped, pages torn out of her sketchbook. She always brushed it off. "Just lost them," she'd say. "Just old stuff," she'd mumble. Marcus wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. He told himself adjusting to a new school takes time. He told himself kids were awkward, clumsy, sometimes rough. He told himself everything was fine because the alternative, that his daughter was hurting, terrified him more than he could admit. But deep down, something didn't sit right. There were mornings Amara lingered near the door as if she hoped he'd notice something she wasn't ready to say. Days she'd hug him longer before leaving, as if she was drawing strength from him she couldn't find at school. Marcus saw the signs, but like many parents carrying guilt they never voice, he pushed them aside, promising himself he'd make it up to her soon. Then came the day everything changed. Marcus was at the shop, tightening bolts on a customer's truck. The radio played softly in the background. His coworker joked about weekend plans. Life felt routine until Marcus glanced at a faded photo taped to his toolbox. Him and Amara on her first day of school, both smiling big, both hopeful. He stared at that picture longer than usual. He thought about her quiet lunches, her missing supplies, her smaller smiles. Something stirred in his chest, a father's instinct he'd ignored for weeks. So he made a decision. He clocked out 2 hours early, grabbed his jacket, and stopped by their favorite sandwich shop. He packed her favorite lunch, the spicy chicken sandwich he always gets mild, because she says the real one makes her nose run, a fruit cup, and the small chocolate bar she thinks he doesn't know she sneaks every time he buys groceries. He was going to surprise her, sit with her, make sure she felt seen. The whole drive to school, he imagined her face lighting up. He pictured her introducing him to her new friends. He wondered which kids she sat with, what games they played during lunch, what jokes made her laugh till she snorted. But when he checked in at the front desk, the front office staff seemed rushed, distant. They pointed him toward the cafeteria with a distracted smile. Marcus walked down the hallway, passing lockers decorated with stickers and backpacks slung across hooks. Kids, voices echoed from the cafeteria ahead, loud, unfiltered, chaotic. He stepped inside, expecting warmth. Instead, his stomach dropped. He didn't see Amara waving. He didn't see her laughing. He didn't see her sitting confidently with friends. He saw her at a table alone, surrounded, cornered, swallowed by a crowd that looked nothing like friendship. He watched a girl snatch something from Amara's tray. He watched another kick her backpack under the table. He watched a third point at her hair and laugh. Marcus's first instinct was disbelief. Not my child. Not sweet, gentle Amara. Not the girl who shares her snacks on the bus, who hugs strangers' dogs, who apologizes to bugs she accidentally steps on. But the truth was right there in front of him. His daughter wasn't being ignored. She wasn't shy. She wasn't adjusting. She was being isolated, picked apart, humiliated, and she had been facing it alone. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the cafeteria, gripping the lunch bag he packed with love, and in that moment, nothing in his world made sense anymore. He came to bring her comfort. Instead, he walked straight into her pain. Little did he know, everything he thought he understood about his daughter, her school, and the people responsible for her safety was about to be turned upside down. What he witnessed next would not just leave him speechless. It would change him forever. Marcus Reed had always believed that schools were supposed to be safe, noisy, messy, sometimes overwhelming, but safe. A place where kids learned how to grow, speak up, belong. But standing in that cafeteria, watching a circle of students closing in around his daughter, the word safe felt like a lie someone once told him because they didn't know better. He took one step forward, then another. Each step felt heavier, as if the truth was dragging at his ankles, trying to warn him, "You're not ready to see this." But he refused to stop. From a distance, the scene didn't look violent. No shoving, no shouting. But that was the danger of this kind of cruelty. It was quiet, calculated, practiced. The kind that slips through the cracks because adults think kids will be kids. The kind Marcus knew too well. He moved closer, blending into the background of cafeteria tables and backpacks. None of the students noticed him yet. Not the boys leaning over Amara, not the girls whispering behind their hands, not the one dangling the applesauce cup above her head like he was teasing a pet. Marcus felt something sharp twist inside him. Amara wasn't crying loudly. She wasn't making a scene. That was the part that hit him hardest. She sat completely still, shoulders tight, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the table. She looked like a child praying no one would choose her for the next joke. He recognized that posture because he'd once used it too. A skinny kid in a school hallway decades ago, pressed against a locker while older boys circled him. Marcus learned silence could feel like the only protection. You make yourself small, invisible, Easy to ignore. He never wanted that for his daughter. A girl leaned closer to Amara. What's wrong? Did Daddy forget to pack real food again? Her voice dripped mock sweetness, but it carried a sting that made the kids around her laugh. Marcus's chest tightened. The boy holding the applesauce smirked. Come on, say please, that's what babies do, right? Amara swallowed hard. Just give it back. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Louder, he demanded. I can't hear you. Marcus felt his jaw clench. He was only a few steps away now. He could see everything, Amara's trembling fingers, the scuffed table edge, the way her backpack strap hung torn like someone had yanked it too hard. Then he noticed something else. A teacher sat only a few tables away, not sleeping, not distracted, watching. She saw the circle. She saw the crowd. She saw the humiliation. And she did nothing. Her face was tight, lips pursed, as if she'd decided stepping in wasn't worth her time. Or worse, as if she believed Amara deserved whatever she was getting. Marcus froze in disbelief. Back at home, he spent nights telling Amara, if anything happens, find an adult, tell a teacher, they'll help you. Seeing that teacher sit still shattered something inside him. He tightened his grip on the lunch bag until the paper wrinkled. His feet moved faster now. But before he could reach them, something happened, something small but enough to break his heart. Amara reached for her applesauce again, hopeful that maybe if she was quick, she could grab it back before he lifted it higher. But the boy jerked his hand up, and the cup slipped. It tumbled in the air. It hit the table. It burst open, a soft splash of applesauce covering her drawings. The kids didn't gasp. They didn't apologize. They laughed. A loud laugh. A cruel laugh. A laugh that echoed across the cafeteria like it belonged there. Amara stared at her ruined papers, the ones she spent nights drawing alone. The superhero sketches with bright colors and hopeful expressions were smeared, the ink bleeding into pale yellow mush. She blinked fast, fighting tears. One fell anyway. Marcus felt something inside him snap. He stepped fully into the circle. The kids only realized he was there when his shadow landed over them. The boy holding the empty applesauce cup turned slowly, still smiling, until he saw the look on Marcus's face. Not anger. Not rage. Something deeper. Something sharper. A quiet disappointment that hit harder than shouting ever could. Marcus looked at each child in turn. Their laughter died in their throats. A few stepped back. Two girls exchanged nervous glances. Then his eyes rested on his daughter. Amara didn't look at him. She kept staring at her hands, as if ashamed to be seen. That broke him more than anything. He knelt beside her. Baby, look at me. Amara hesitated. Her chin wobbled. She finally lifted her eyes. Marcus wasn't ready for what he saw. Not sadness. Not fear. Resignation. The expression of someone who had been dealing with this far longer than one lunch period. Someone who had already learned no one was coming. He knew instantly this wasn't the first time. He felt the weight of that realization crash onto him like a wave. He placed the lunch bag on the table. I brought your favorite, he said gently, trying to steady his voice. The boy who had mocked her shifted uneasily. We weren't doing anything, he mumbled. Marcus turned his head slowly. Did I ask you something? The boy went silent. Marcus took a long breath. He didn't yell, didn't raise his voice. His calmness frightened the kids more than any shouting could. He stood up straight. Who's in charge of this table? He asked. No one answered. The teacher nearby suddenly stood up, pretending she hadn't been watching from the start. She walked over with a forced smile. Is there a problem here? Marcus looked at her, not with anger, but with disbelief so deep it felt like betrayal. You tell me, he said quietly. The room felt colder. The teacher glanced at the scattered papers, the burst applesauce, the shifting students. Kids can be messy. I'm sure it was an accident. Marcus stared at her. Was it an accident yesterday, or the day before, or all the times she came home with torn supplies? The teacher blinked fast. I'm not aware of any ongoing issues. Amara flinched at the lie. Marcus felt another crack in his heart. He stepped closer to the teacher, not threatening, simply unyielding. "You watched, I saw you, you watched it all." The teacher's face flushed. "Sir, you're misinterpreting." "That's my daughter." His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of every moment she'd faced alone. "You had one job." The cafeteria had gone silent now. Kids turned, teachers paused, whispers began. Marcus didn't care. He turned back to Amara. "Come on, baby, let's go to the office." "But," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "You're not dealing with this alone anymore." As they began to walk away, one of the girls muttered under her breath, just loud enough for Amara to hear. "Crybaby." Marcus heard it too. He stopped walking. Slowly, he turned around. The entire cafeteria held its breath. "Say it again," he said, not angrily, but with a calm so heavy the girl froze. She didn't repeat it. Marcus nodded once, as if that settled everything. Then he guided his daughter out of the cafeteria. But the moment the door closed behind them, Marcus realized something. This wasn't just bullying. It was tolerated. It was allowed. It was ignored. Someone, maybe several people, had looked at his daughter's pain and decided it wasn't worth interrupting lunch. And that was something he couldn't walk away from. Because today he walked in early. But tomorrow, what would have happened if he did? He knew one thing for certain. The truth wasn't just starting, it was about to explode wide open. Marcus stood there holding Amara's small hand, walking her toward the front office, but every step felt heavier. The hallway lights hummed above them, lockers clicked shut in distant corners, and somewhere a bell echoed like a warning. Amara kept her head lowered, clutching her backpack strap with her free hand, the other swinging slightly in Marcus's grip. She wasn't crying anymore, but the silence was worse. It felt like she was shrinking with every step. Mr. Hall walked slightly ahead, clearing his throat every few seconds like he was trying to think of the right words. He didn't turn around, didn't say much. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe he didn't want to say anything at all. When they reached the office door, Amara hesitated. Marcus felt her fingers tighten around his. He squeezed back gently. But when she looked up at him, he saw something he hadn't seen before. Not just fear, not just sadness. It was something deeper, something that made Marcus's chest burn. It was doubt. Like she wasn't sure he could fix this. Inside the office, the receptionist looked up, a middle-aged woman with glasses hanging low and a tired expression that softened the moment she saw Amara. "Sweetheart, you okay?" she asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer. He let Amara decide, but she only shrugged slightly, eyes shifting away. Mr. Hall stepped forward. "We need Ms. Turner, and we may need to call the other parents." The receptionist nodded and hurried down the hallway. While they waited, Marcus kneeled in front of Amara and gently tilted her chin up. "Baby girl," he whispered, "you didn't do anything wrong." Her lip quivered. "But they don't like me." "Who told you that?" She shrugged again, looking at the floor. "Everybody." Marcus felt his stomach drop. That word, everybody, was too big, too heavy, too absolute for a little girl to say. It meant this wasn't new. It meant she'd been carrying this alone for a long time. He brushed her cheek with his thumb. "You don't need everybody," he murmured. "You only need the right bodies, and trust me, you got them." She tried to smile. It faltered halfway. When Ms. Turner entered, she saw the scene instantly. The red eyes, the stiff posture, the way Marcus stood protectively between his daughter and the world. "I'm so sorry," she began softly. "I had no idea this was happening." Marcus's teeth pressed together. "How could you not know?" Ms. Turner lowered her gaze. "The cafeteria is loud, it's chaotic, we can't catch everything, but I promise we're going to get to the bottom of this." "Not promises," Marcus said. "Action." The tension in the room tightened. Amara watched them both, eyes flicking nervously between them. Ms. Turner cleared her throat. "I've asked the 3 students involved to wait in the conference room with the vice principal." Marcus felt something in him flare. 3. "Yes," she said. "Darren, Eliza, and Noah." He recognized the names, the boy who snatched her applesauce, the girl who pushed her tray, the one who laughed like it was all normal. "Parents have been called," Ms. Turner added. "They should be arriving shortly." Marcus exhaled slowly. Good. They all walked to the conference room. The air in the hallway felt different now, tighter, heavier, charged with a quiet storm. Inside the room, the three kids sat at a long table. Darren leaned back in his chair, unfazed. Elise fiddled with her nails. Noah tapped his foot, glancing around like he wished he was anywhere else. None of them looked scared. None of them even looked sorry. Marcus felt Amara shrink behind him. Then the parents started to arrive. Darren's mother walked in first, blazer, heels, sunglasses on her head, even indoors. She gave one look at Marcus and then turned to the vice principal. "What's this about? I have a meeting in 30 minutes. Elise's father arrived next, expensive watch, polished shoes, stiff jaw. He looked around the room with irritation, not concern. Noah's mother entered last, softer expression, eyes darting around nervously. She seemed unsure, like she already knew her son had done something wrong but didn't know how bad it was. Ms. Turner began explaining the incident. The taunting, the food, the backpack, the tears. As she spoke, Marcus watched the parents' faces. Darren's mother looked bored. Elise's father looked annoyed. Noah's mother looked increasingly uncomfortable. Then Ms. Turner said, "Amara hasn't been eating lunch properly for several days. It appears this behavior has been ongoing." Marcus's jaw tightened. Darren's mother crossed her arms. "Kids tease. Mine got teased last year. It happens." Elise's father nodded. "They're children. You're making this more dramatic than it really is." Noah's mother whispered, "Noah, is that true?" But before Noah could answer, Darren smirked. "We didn't even do anything that bad." Marcus stepped forward. "You made my daughter cry." "She cries easy," Elise muttered under her breath. That was almost enough to make Marcus snap, but he held himself together. Barely. The vice principal cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, please, will handle the disciplinary actions." Marcus turned toward him, voice steady but sharp. "You had your chance to handle it, you didn't." The room went silent. Amara's fingers touched Marcus's sleeve, like she was reminding him she was there, reminding him to breathe. He did. Finally, the vice principal tried again. "Let's remain calm." Marcus looked around the room, at the parents who excused the behavior, at the kids who didn't fear consequences, at the administrators who let this slip through the cracks. And that's when he saw something else. A bruise, barely visible, faint, on Noah's wrist when he shifted his sleeve, dark, finger-shaped. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing yet. Ms. Turner finally said, "Each student will receive a suspension." Darren's mother scoffed. "Absolutely not. My son will not be suspended over some girl being dramatic." Elise's father stood up. "This is absurd. I won't allow it." Noah's mother hesitated. Maybe they need consequences." For the first time, Noah looked up at her. His eyes were wide, not angry, but scared. Before anyone could respond, the door opened again, sharply, like someone pushed it with intention. The school principal entered. A woman known for being strict, fair, and unshakable. She looked at the room, at Marcus, at Amara, at the three kids, at their parents. Then she said one sentence that instantly shifted the air in the room. "I've reviewed the footage." Everyone froze. Even the kids. Even Darren. Even Elise. The parents straightened in their seats. Ms. Turner exhaled in relief. Marcus didn't move. The principal placed a folder on the table and folded her hands. "There is more happening here than any of you realized." Amara swallowed hard, standing closer to her father. "Much more." And for the first time, Darren's smirk disappeared. Because whatever the principal saw, whatever she was about to reveal, wasn't just bullying. It was something darker. Something that would change everything. The principal placed both hands on the table, steady, calm, but her eyes carried a weight that made the entire room fall silent. Even the air felt like it paused. Marcus sensed something brewing, something bigger than playground teasing, bigger than cafeteria drama. She opened the folder slowly, deliberately, and then lifted her gaze toward the three kids. "I watched the cafeteria footage," she began. "But I didn't just watch today, I went back through the last 2 weeks." A shiver crawled through Noah's posture. Elise shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Darren leaned forward, trying to look unfazed but failing. His fingers tapped nervously against the metal chair. The principal continued, What I saw wasn't a single incident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was repeated behavior, targeted, coordinated. Amara lowered her head slightly. Marcus touched her shoulder. The principal's voice sharpened, and it wasn't only against Amara. A stillness rolled across the room. Eliza's father frowned. What do you mean, not only? The principal slid a printed still frame across the table. Noah's mother reached for it before anyone else could. The image showed something subtle. Noah standing at his locker, shoulders tight, Darren behind him, too close, whispering something into his ear that made Noah flinch. Eli's in the background, laughing. Noah shrank in his seat. His mother placed the photo down gently, then turned to him, her voice cracking. Noah, why didn't you say something? He didn't speak, he didn't have to. His silence asterisk was the answer. Darren rolled his eyes. We were just messing around, it's not that serious. The principal raised an eyebrow. Not serious? Do you want to see the clip where you shoved him into the lockers, or the one where you took his notebook and threw it across the hall? Noah's face flushed with shame. Eliza's eyes widened. Darren stopped tapping. Marcus watched them all, slowly understanding that this wasn't random cruelty. This was a pattern, a system, a cycle. The principal turned to the adults. This behavior didn't come out of nowhere. Children mimic what they see. They test boundaries based on the reactions around them. Darren's mother bristled. Are you blaming us? I'm explaining the environment, the principal replied steadily. The one that shapes them. Eliza's father scoffed. Kids push each other. You're acting like this is some criminal investigation. It is serious, the principal said, because this crosses from teasing into harassment, and because at least one of these kids, she glanced at Noah again, isn't just harming others, he's being harmed himself. Noah's mother covered her mouth with her hand. The vice principal added quietly, Noah has visited the nurse 6 times this month. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. The bruise he saw earlier wasn't an accident, and now the pieces began fitting together in ways he didn't expect. The principal continued, now today's footage shows something even more concerning. She pulled out a second printed frame. This time, the image was angled differently, captured from the opposite corner of the cafeteria, zoomed enough to see the entire group of kids around Amara. But the detail that stopped the room cold was small. Darren pushing a younger student away when the child tried to step in. A younger boy, barely 10, trying to defend Amara and being shoved aside for it. Eliza's father blinked. Who is that boy? The principal sighed. That's Malik Thompson, he's in 5th grade, he tried to intervene. Marcus felt something tighten in his throat. No one else said a word. The principal leaned back, folding her arms. And if that doesn't concern you, the last piece will. She pulled out a final slip of paper, a single printed sentence pulled from audio analysis of the cafeteria footage. It wasn't loud, it wasn't shouted. It was said quietly, like someone knew exactly what they were doing. The line read, "Don't bother defending her. Nobody's going to believe her anyway." Amara looked away instantly, eyes welling. Marcus froze. That phrase, it wasn't childish. It wasn't innocent. It sounded rehearsed, repeated, learned. The kind of sentence kids hear in homes where belittling is normal, where silence is taught, where blame is shifted. The principal's voice dropped. This wasn't childish teasing, this was targeted humiliation. Darren's mother stood. This is ridiculous, my son would never say that. The principal slid the audio clip across the table. It's his voice. Darren's face went pale. His mother's confidence cracked. Eli's looked like she wanted to disappear. Noah simply lowered his head, already knowing. The principal folded her hands again. We are not just dealing with behavior that hurts one child. We're dealing with behavior rooted in neglect, mimicry, and unaddressed conflict. The room simmered with unspoken truths. Finally, the principal turned to Marcus. Mr. Reed, I'm truly sorry this happened to your daughter, and I know an apology isn't enough, which is why I have a proposal. Marcus nodded cautiously. I'm listening. The principal straightened. I want to involve all 4 families in restorative action, not just punishment, not just suspension, something more meaningful. Eliza's father scoffed. Like what? Holding hands and singing songs. No, she replied. Actual accountability, community sessions, parent involvement, school counseling, exposure to positive conflict resolution, and consequences that actually teach. Darren's mother crossed her arms. Absolutely not. Darren doesn't need therapy. The principal's face hardened. Then perhaps you do. Even Marcus blinked at that one. Silence fell again. The principal went on, unwavering. Your children are learning from somewhere, and fixing this requires more than detention slips. Marcus watched the parents react. Noah's mother, horrified, grieving, determined. Eliza's father, defensive, irritated, unwilling. Darren's mother, furious, dismissive, in denial. Then he looked at the kids. Noah, hurting from more than he admitted. Eli's guilty but scared to show it. Darren, frightened under the surface but too proud to admit it. And Amara. She stood in the corner, hugging herself, unsure whether she was safe yet. Marcus kneeled beside her. Hey, he whispered, you seeing all this? She nodded a little. You're not the problem, he said. You're the truth, and sometimes the truth makes people uncomfortable. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The principal cleared her throat. If the families refuse to participate, the next step will be formal escalation. School board involvement, psychological evaluations, mandatory reporting if any signs of abuse are confirmed. Noah's mother winced. Eliza's father froze. Darren's mother opened her mouth, but no excuse came out. The vice principal added quietly, this is the point where adults step up, or the damage continues. For a moment, no one spoke at all. Then Marcus said, calmly but firmly, I'm in. The principal nodded, as if she expected that. Noah's mother whispered, I'll participate, whatever it takes. Eliza's father hesitated, his jaw tightened. His pride fought him, then he muttered, fine if it ends this. All eyes turned to Darren's mother. She stood stiff, furious, caught between image and responsibility. Finally, after a long, vibrating silence, she exhaled sharply. All right. It wasn't sincerity, but it was agreement. The principal closed the folder. Good, because the next step will require all of you. Marcus felt the shift instantly. The truth was out. But consequences, they were only beginning. And the storm that had been contained inside this room was about to spill into the wider world. Parents, teachers, students, and a community that would soon learn that silence has a price. A price someone had already paid. And someone else was about to. The meeting ended, but the tension followed everyone like a shadow. The hallway outside the conference room was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that happens before a storm breaks. Students walked past, whispering, curious about why 4 parents and a principal had stayed so long behind closed doors. Marcus kept one hand on Amara's shoulder as they stepped into the hall. He didn't have to say anything. She stayed close to him, as if letting go even for a second might make everything collapse again. Noah walked out with his mother, hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the floor. He looked small, like someone who had learned to make himself invisible to avoid being hurt. Eliza trailed behind her father, her face stiff, her eyes swollen with earlier tears she tried to hide. She wasn't used to being called out. She wasn't used to being wrong, and she definitely wasn't used to her actions having consequences. Darren marched out last, his mother gripping his arm. His eyes darted everywhere but toward the others. His shoulders were tight, defiant, but beneath that posture was something else. Fear, confusion, maybe even the first flicker of guilt. The principal remained at her doorway, watching them all disperse. We begin tomorrow, she said. Morning session, all of you. Marcus nodded. Noah's mother whispered a quiet yes. Eliza's father gave a curt nod. Darren's mother didn't speak. But they all heard. Marcus walked Amara toward the exit, but halfway down the hall, she tugged his sleeve gently. Daddy, can I just go home with you now? Marcus paused. The school day wasn't over, but he saw the way she held herself, the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she had been carrying far longer than he realized. Yes, he said immediately, we're leaving. They stepped outside into the sunlight, warm, gentle, nothing like the heaviness they left behind. Yet even out here, Marcus felt something unresolved clinging to the moment. Daddy, Amara's voice was soft. Am I in trouble? Marcus froze, then he knelt so he could look her straight in the eyes. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "Nothing." She swallowed, but they were all mad, and the way those parents looked at me. "They were mad at themselves," Marcus interrupted gently. "Not you." Amara blinked, her eyes shining with confusion and hurt. She didn't know how much today had revealed. She didn't know how deeply adults tried to hide their flaws behind discipline and excuses. All she knew was that she had stood alone for too long. Marcus opened his arms, and she folded into him like she'd been waiting all day, maybe all month, for that moment of safety. "Let's go home," he whispered. As they walked to the car, Marcus noticed something across the parking lot. Noah standing by a lamppost, staring after them. His mother was on the phone with someone, pacing anxiously, but Noah wasn't paying attention. He was watching Amara. Not with guilt, with something like admiration. Or maybe relief, knowing someone else finally saw what he'd been enduring too. Marcus gave him a small nod. Noah didn't smile, but he nodded back. It was the slightest flicker of connection. Two kids linked not by friendship, but by survival. Marcus felt it deeply. He drove Amara home in silence, giving her space to breathe. The radio stayed off. The windows stayed closed. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't rushing anywhere, wasn't thinking about work deadlines, wasn't planning tomorrow's responsibilities. He was present. Fully present. When they got home, Amara dropped her backpack in the hallway and went straight to the living room. She curled into the corner of the couch, legs tucked under her, holding one of the small pillows the way she used to hold her stuffed bear as a little girl. Marcus sat beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she broke the silence with something Marcus didn't expect. "Daddy, why didn't you come earlier, before all this?" The question pierced him deeper than any accusation. His mouth opened, but the words tangled somewhere between guilt and truth. "I thought you were okay," he said softly. "I wanted to believe you were okay." "I didn't want to bother you," she whispered. "You always work so hard, I didn't want to make you worry." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. This little girl, his whole world, had been protecting him while she was the one hurting. "You never bother me," he whispered. "I need you to know that." Amara leaned into him. "I'm just tired, Daddy." "I know, baby, I know." They stayed that way until her breathing slowed, and the weight she'd been carrying finally began to release itself in quiet, shaky exhales. When she eventually fell asleep against his side, Marcus gently laid her down, brushed a curl from her forehead, and stood up slowly. He walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter, closed his eyes, and let the truth crash into him. He had been trying so hard to be a provider that he didn't realize his daughter had been struggling silently right under his roof. But silence ends when someone finally listens. Marcus wasn't going to miss another sign. Not one. That evening, the principal sent an email outlining the next day's plan: group sessions, parent workshops, guided conversation, accountability assignments. But she added one final note at the bottom. "Mr. Reed, please come 20 minutes early tomorrow. Amara will need you present for something important." Marcus stared at the message, unsettled. He didn't know what was planned, but he understood one thing. The school wasn't treating this like a simple discipline case anymore. They were preparing for something deeper. Something that could either heal the children involved or expose truths the parents weren't ready to face. The next morning arrived sooner than Marcus expected. He packed Amara's lunch with extra care, wrote a little note and placed it in the bag, a tiny message she could unfold when she needed it most. He walked her into the building, not letting go of her hand until the counselor gently guided her to a small room where she and the other kids would meet. Marcus stayed behind in the hallway. He wasn't alone. Noah's mother arrived moments later, carrying a folder of paperwork and wearing the expression of someone who spent the entire night blaming herself. Eliza's father walked in next, frustration etched all over his face like he had rehearsed every excuse he wanted to give. And Darren's mother. She walked in last, stiff posture, eyes darting around like she was preparing for battle instead of healing. Marcus didn't approach any of them. He didn't need to. The principal stepped into the hallway, offering a small nod to each parent before focusing on Marcus. "You ready?" she asked. "I am," he said. She studied him for a moment. "Just so you know, this may get harder before it gets better." Marcus exhaled slowly. "As long as it gets better." The principal opened the door. Inside, the four children sat in a circle. Amara in one corner, Noah beside her, Eliza across from them, and Darren next to her. 4 lives. 4 stories. 4 truths waiting to collide. And Marcus stepped inside knowing that this session was about to unravel everything they thought they understood. This wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the beginning of the real fight. The room they entered wasn't like a typical classroom. No desks, no whiteboards, just a wide circle of chairs in the center, deliberately arranged so no one could hide behind anyone. Marcus took his place behind Amara's seat. He didn't hover, didn't loom, didn't intimidate. He simply stood as a quiet anchor, solid, steady, unshakable. The principal and school counselor walked in last, closing the door gently, sealing everyone inside a space where truth could no longer be avoided. The counselor spoke first. "In this room, honesty is required, not forced but required for healing." Darren shifted hard in his seat. Eli stared at her shoes. Noah's hands shook in his lap. And Amara sat upright, not because she wanted to be brave, but because she refused to look small anymore. The counselor continued, "Today isn't about blame, it's about truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable for every single person in this room." She turned first to Amara. "Amara, would you like to start by sharing how lunch times have felt for you?" Amara hesitated, then slowly shook her head. "I don't want to talk first." The counselor nodded, respecting her boundary. "All right, then someone else will." Her eyes moved to Noah. He froze, then swallowed. I didn't want to be here," he admitted, "but I think I should say something." His mother leaned forward slightly, encouraging without pushing. Noah lifted his eyes, but not to the adults. He looked straight at Darren and Eli's. "You two didn't just bother Amara," he said softly. "You bothered me too." Eli's blinked. Darren stiffened. Noah kept going, his voice trembling but steady. "You laughed at me, you pushed me, you took my things, and I didn't say anything because you told me if I did, it would get worse." The words hit the room like a slow, controlled explosion, quiet but devastating. Darren's jaw clenched. "We were just messing." "No," Noah interrupted, not loud but firm. "You weren't messing." Everyone went silent. Noah's voice cracked. "You scared me, both of you." Darren's mother inhaled sharply. Eliza's father's face hardened, but not from anger at Noah, from a realization. The counselor nodded gently. "Thank you, Noah." But Noah wasn't finished. "And the worst part," he whispered, "is that you started being meaner when I talked to Amara." Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. He knelt slightly, now seeing the bigger picture. The counselor asked quietly, "Why did that matter to them?" Noah hesitated. His face reddened. His hands twisted together. Because they said." He didn't finish. The counselor didn't rush him. "Take your time." Noah closed his eyes, then forced the words out. "They said I shouldn't be friends with her because she's black." The room froze. A complete breathless stillness. Even the lights seemed louder than the people. Marcus's back straightened. Amara's breath hitched. Eliza's eyes widened in shock, not because she didn't know he was telling the truth, but because she never expected it to be spoken aloud. Darren looked away instantly. His mother covered her mouth with her hand, horrified in a way she hadn't expected. The counselor responded calmly, but with a deep gravity. "Thank you for being brave, Noah." But Noah shook his head. "I wasn't brave, I just didn't want Amara to feel alone anymore." Amara's eyes softened. She looked at Noah not with pity but with understanding. The principal stepped closer. "Who said that phrase first?" she asked gently. Noah's gaze flickered. He stared at the floor. Slowly, he lifted a trembling finger toward Darren. The room dropped into silence again. Darren snapped up defensive. "I didn't mean." The counselor raised a hand. No excuses, just truth. Darren looked trapped, cornered between pride and guilt. His mother whispered harshly, "Tell the truth." And something cracked in him. His shoulders sagged. His posture softened. His voice dropped from defiant to small. "I heard it at home." The counselor nodded slowly. "What did you hear?" Darren swallowed hard. "My uncle said it once, about a girl in his neighborhood. He said not to trust people who look like Amara." Amara flinched. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he stayed steady. Darren whispered, "So I repeated it. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think it would hurt so much." The counselor's voice softened. "It mattered and it hurt." Darren's lower lip shook. Elise watched him with confusion, because she'd never seen him look anything other than untouchable. Then the counselor turned to her. "Elise, what part did you play?" Elise stiffened. Her father glared at her from behind, the silent pressure heavy. Elise's voice came out thin. "I laughed, and I joined in, because Darren's popular and I didn't want him to make fun of me too." Her honesty was fragile but real. She looked at Amara then, really looked at her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think about how it felt, I just didn't want to be alone." Amara didn't respond. "Not yet." The counselor stepped into the center of the circle. Children make choices based on what they're taught or what they're afraid of. But today isn't about who's popular. Today is about who's responsible. All four kids looked down, absorbing the truth. The counselor continued. "We're going to do something difficult, something that requires courage." She placed 4 blank index cards in the middle of the circle. "I want each child to write one sentence. This is what I did." Not excuses. Not explanations. Just accountability. Darren stared at the card like it weighed 20 pounds. Elise picked up her pen with trembling fingers. Noah hesitated, unsure if he needed to write at all, because he wasn't the aggressor, but the counselor nodded softly. "Your truth matters too." Amara looked at the card the longest. She wasn't the one who did wrong. So what was she supposed to write? The counselor approached her gently. "Amara, you can write what happened to you, or you can write nothing. This part isn't about forcing pain, it's about giving voice to what was silent." Amara nodded slowly. The room filled with quiet scratching as the children wrote. Marcus watched, heavy-hearted but hopeful. When they finished, the counselor collected the cards. "One by one," she said, "each child will read their sentence aloud." Darren stiffened. His mother whispered behind him, "Read it." After a long pause, he lifted the card. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I bullied Amara and Noah because I thought it made me look strong." He lowered the card, shame washing over him. Elise was next. "I laughed at Amara to fit in. I didn't stop even when I knew it was wrong." Her father's expression cracked, anger, disappointment, and guilt all swirling together. Noah read third. "I didn't stand up for Amara or myself, and I let things get worse because I was scared." His mother quietly wept behind him. Finally, Amara. She lifted her card slowly, her voice shaking but brave. "I kept quiet because I didn't think anyone would believe me." Marcus felt his heart twist painfully. He reached for her shoulder. She leaned into his touch. The counselor spoke again, gentle but firm. "Accountability is the first step, but now comes the harder part, understanding impact." She turned to Darren first. "Look at Amara, tell her what your actions made her feel." Darren hesitated, then met Amara's eyes for the first time in weeks. "I made you feel small," he whispered. "Like you didn't matter, I didn't think about how bad it hurt you. I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "No one expected that." The counselor turned to Elise. "You too." Elise wiped her eyes. "I made you feel alone, and like you didn't have any friends. I'm sorry, Amara." Then Noah turned to her without needing to be asked. "I didn't protect you, even when I wanted to. I'm sorry too." Amara's throat tightened. She whispered, "Thank you." The counselor nodded. "Now, Amara, tell them what their actions did to you." Amara inhaled. Her voice trembled. You made me feel scared to come to school. You made me sit alone every day. You made me think something was wrong with me. Her eyes filled. But hearing you tell the truth today, it helps. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the beginning. The counselor stepped back. This is the turning point, the moment where truth changes behavior. She looked at each child. At the end of today, I'm asking all of you to make a commitment, a real one. She handed each child a new card. Write down the kind of person you want to be, starting today. The kids wrote slowly this time, not out of fear but thought. When they were done, they each held up their cards. Darren, I want to be someone who protects people, not hurts them. Elise, I want to be kind, even if others disagree. Noah, I want to be brave. Amara, I want to be myself without being scared. For the first time all day, Marcus felt something soften, something shift. Not perfection, not instant healing, but possibility. The counselor placed all 4 cards on the center table. These cards stay here, she said. We will revisit them every week, and your actions will have to match your words. She turned to the parents. This moment, what you've seen here, is only the start. What happens next is up to you. Marcus looked at Amara. Her shoulders weren't hunched. Her hands weren't clenched. For the first time, she looked free. And he felt it in his chest. The storm had finally broken, and sunlight was fighting its way through. For a long moment, the cafeteria sat in stunned silence, not because the bullies had been exposed, but because everyone was trying to understand what they had just witnessed from a man who looked like he carried the weight of generations on his shoulders and still stood tall. Marcus stayed kneeling beside Amara, one arm around her, the other steadying her trembling hand. The school counselor, Ms. Price, remained close but didn't interrupt. She understood that this moment wasn't hers to fix. It belonged to a father who had just stepped through a door his daughter didn't know how to open. Amara lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red, her breathing shaky, but she wasn't hiding her face anymore. Not with her father here, not after everything had broken open. Daddy, I'm sorry, she whispered, voice trembling. Marcus shook his head immediately, gently cupping her cheeks. No, baby, don't you ever apologize for someone else's cruelty. You hear me? She nodded softly. Behind them, the principal finally arrived, Mr. Whitman, slightly out of breath, clearly confused by the crowd gathered in the middle of lunch. His eyes widened when he saw Marcus, the counselor, and the kids he'd seen in his office so many times for minor conflicts. Mr. Reed, he said, trying to regain control, I was told there was a situation. Marcus stood slowly, positioning Amara behind him as if instinct demanded it. His tone remained calm, steady, but there was something unshakable beneath it. Sir, I've been emailing this school for weeks, Marcus said. Calling, asking for help, asking anyone to step in before this got worse. Whitman opened his mouth, but Marcus kept going. And every time I was told the same thing. We'll keep an eye on it. We don't have confirmed evidence. Kids go through conflict. He gestured toward his daughter's torn notebook and spilled tray. This isn't conflict. This is my daughter being broken down every single day while I trusted this building to protect her. A ripple of murmurs traveled through nearby students. Some of them looked uncomfortable, some guilty. Others simply shocked that the adults they assumed were in control weren't. Whitman cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, I assure you. No, Marcus said softly. Don't assure me, show me. For once, the principal didn't have a prepared speech. His eyes dropped to the ground. Ms. Price stepped forward, then voice gentle. We'll handle disciplinary action today, and I'll personally create a monitoring plan for Amara. She won't be left alone again. Marcus nodded, appreciating the sincerity in her tone. But the real shift came when 2 unexpected figures stepped forward, Lily and Jacob's parents, who had been called from their volunteer work in the school garden and had arrived just in time to witness the aftermath. Lily's mother placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, voice firm but not angry. You will apologize, right now, and not the kind you say to get out of trouble. Lily swallowed hard, eyes brimming with tears, maybe guilt, maybe fear, maybe both. She stepped forward toward Amara. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I thought it was funny, I didn't think you'd. She hesitated, searching for words. I didn't think you'd feel this bad. Amara didn't respond, she didn't know how, and she didn't have to. Jacob's father nudged his son next. Jacob stared at the floor. I shouldn't have touched your stuff or said things, I just... His voice faltered, I'm sorry. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was the beginning of accountability, and in Marcus's eyes, that mattered. Whitman straightened up, attempting to take back a shred of authority. We'll discuss consequences in my office. For now, everyone return to your seats. Students slowly scattered, the cafeteria buzzing with whispers as the tension deflated. But Marcus wasn't done. He knelt again beside Amara, lifting her chin gently. Baby, look at me. She did fragile but trying. I'm proud of you, he said softly. You hear me? I am proud of you for waking up every day and still trying, for holding yourself together when you shouldn't have had to, and for letting me be here now. Tears welled again in her eyes, but for the first time today, they weren't from pain. Can I go home? She asked. Yeah, Marcus whispered, brushing her cheek. We're going home. Ms. Price nodded. I'll write the dismissal note, take all the time you need. As Marcus helped her gather her things, Amara paused and looked at the kids who were still watching. Kids who never bullied her directly but never stopped it either. And for the first time, she didn't look small. She looked aware. She looked seen. Marcus guided her out of the cafeteria, his hand firm on her back. With each step, she felt a little less alone, a little less afraid, a little more like herself again. But halfway down the hall, she tugged his sleeve. Daddy. Yeah, baby. If they do it again, what do I do? Marcus stopped walking. Kneeling once more so they were eye level, he spoke with the weight of a father who knew too much about battles fought in silence. You tell me, he said. Every time, no hiding, no protecting anyone's feelings but your own, you tell me and I'll show up. I'll always show up. She nodded slowly. Something in her posture changed, no longer curled inward but straightening. And then, in a quiet voice that cracked the last piece of his heart, she whispered, I didn't want to bother you because you work so hard. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. Baby, he said, voice thick, nothing in this world is more important than you. Nothing. They walked out together into the afternoon sun. Marcus opened the truck door for her, set her backpack carefully beside her seat, and drove them away from the school, away from the cafeteria where she'd swallowed pain alone for too long. But as they reached the stoplight near their home, Amara looked out the window and whispered, Daddy, thank you for coming. And Marcus realized something he wished he had understood sooner. It wasn't about rescuing her. It was about showing her she wasn't invisible, that she had someone who refused to let her be unseen. When they arrived home, he made her lunch again. But this time they ate together on the porch, slow, quiet, and healing. And for the first time in weeks, Amara laughed. Not loudly, not fully, but enough. Enough for Marcus to know she was coming back piece by piece. Enough for him to promise himself he would stay involved, not just when something broke, but every day. Because protecting her wasn't a moment. It was a commitment. It was fatherhood. It was love. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought on the streets. They're fought in the quiet moments, inside classrooms, hallways, and lunchrooms, where the weight of words, neglect, and silence can crush a child's spirit. Amara's story is a reminder that children notice everything. Every glance, every whispered insult, every moment adults choose not to act. And while it might seem small to ignore these moments, the damage can grow silently until it becomes unbearable. But it is also a story about truth, about courage, about the power of showing up. Marcus didn't just come to the school to witness what was happening. He came to be present, to affirm that his daughter mattered and that her pain was not invisible. That presence changed everything. His attention, his voice, his love became a shield, and that shield didn't erase the hurt, it gave her the strength to face it. The truth, spoken aloud, can be painful, but it can also be healing. Accountability isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing the impact of your actions and choosing to do better. Darren and Elise learned that today. Noah learned that speaking up can break cycles of fear. And Amara learned that even when the world seems against you, you are never truly alone when someone stands beside you. We often underestimate the power of witnessing, listening, and showing care. A single adult stepping in, refusing to ignore injustice, can change the course of a child's life. And sometimes, it only takes one parent, one teacher, one guardian to spark the courage for an entire community to wake up and act. If this story touched you, remember, pay attention to the silences around you. Notice the subtle struggles. Speak when it's easier to stay quiet. Protect the ones who cannot always protect themselves. And never underestimate the power of presence, because sometimes showing up is all it takes to give someone hope. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below how you would stand up if you were Marcus. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the strength of truth, love, and justice. The smallest acts of care can ripple further than we ever imagine. And sometimes, showing up is the bravest thing we can do.